Picture a 5-year-old girl standing on a bombed-out street in a town called Pozzuoli, just outside Naples. It's the early 1940s. The air smells like smoke and salt water. Somewhere nearby, a munitions plant that the Allies keep trying to blow off the map has just been hit again, and this little girl is running for the shelter when a piece of shrapnel opens a gash across her chin. She doesn't die. She doesn't even really cry, from what we're told. She just keeps running. That kid grows up to have her face on magazine covers in 40 countries. That kid becomes Sophia Loren. I want to sit with that for a second because it's easy to look at old glamour photos and forget that the woman in them once ate literally nothing for days at a time. Was so thin the other kids nicknamed her Stachetto, Italian for little twig, and spent her childhood ducking bombs in a fishing village most of the world couldn't find on a map. This is not a fairy tale that starts with a fairy tale beginning. It starts in rubble. So let's talk about the parts of Sophia Loren's life that don't usually make it onto the highlight reel. Because honestly, some of this stuff is funny. Some of it is genuinely creepy. And almost all of it sounds made up, even though none of it is. Here's a detail that gets glossed over a lot. Sophia Cineglow, that was her real name, was legally speaking a child nobody was supposed to have. Her parents never married. Her father, an engineer named Ricardo, took one look at fatherhood and left before she could walk. Her mother, Romilda, had once auditioned in Hollywood and lost a role to Greta Garbo. That's a true story, and I imagine it haunted her for the rest of her life. And now here she was alone, raising 2 girls in a house with 8 people crammed under one roof. When the bombing got bad, the family fled to Naples. When it calmed down, they went back to Pozzuoli, where the grandmother did something almost absurdly practical. She turned the living room into a bar, sold homemade liquor to American soldiers. Sophia's mother played piano, her sister sang, and little Sophia, the future Oscar winner, waited tables and washed the glasses. And during the air raids, when the sirens went off and everyone else hid underground, she would sometimes duck into the local movie house instead, sit in the dark, watch Rita Hayworth glow in black and white while the actual sky outside might be on fire. If you want an origin story for how a hungry kid from a bombed town decides she's going to be a movie star, that's basically it. Bombs falling outside, Hollywood glowing inside. Fast forward to 1950. Sophia. She hasn't even taken that name yet. She's competing as Sophia Lazaro, a joke name someone gave her because people said her beauty could apparently raise the dead. Enters a local pageant. She's 14. Doesn't win. Gets a runner-up title. But sitting on the judging panel is a film producer named Carlo Ponti. He is 37 years old. I want you to just sit with that number for a moment because we are about to spend the rest of this episode describing one of the most publicly devoted marriages in film history. And it began with a grown man noticing a young teenager across a room. It's the kind of detail that, if you squint at it through a modern lens, is genuinely uncomfortable. And Italy at the time didn't love it either, though for entirely different, far more bureaucratic reasons, which we'll get to. Ponti started managing her, got her small parts, and in 1957, years later, once she was an adult, the two of them decided to get married. That's where things get weird. Here's the part of the story that sounds like a Kafka short story, and honestly kind of is one. Ponti was already married to a woman named Giuliana, but Italy, at that point in history, did not recognize divorce at all. So Ponti did what a lot of desperate, well-lawyered people did. He got a divorce in Mexico, and he and Sophia were married there too, by proxy, meaning 2 lawyers stood in for them at the ceremony while the actual bride and groom weren't even in the room. Italian authorities looked at this and said, no, not happening. As far as the law was concerned, Ponti was still married to his first wife, which meant legally Sophia Loren, international movie star about to become genuinely famous, was branded a concubine. She was threatened with excommunication from the Catholic Church. Threatened, she has said, with the everlasting fire. Think about the strangeness of that sentence. A woman who would go on to win an Academy Award was, at the same time, being informally threatened with eternal damnation by her own government's entanglement with the church over a wedding 2 lawyers attended on her behalf. So they did the only thing they could. They left. Lived quietly, sometimes secretly in exile, moving between countries, avoiding Italy, dodging journalists who wanted to know if the beautiful actress was technically a criminal. Eventually, they became French citizens. The paperwork was personally signed off by the French government and got married again, properly this time, in 1966. 9 years after the first illegal wedding. They stayed married until Ponte's death in 2007. 50 years, more or less, spent proving a point to a legal system that tried to keep them apart. Okay, here's the eerie one. In 1956, on a dusty film set in Spain, Sophia Loren met Cary Grant. He was 53, already on his third marriage, and he became, by every account, completely fixated on her. What's strange isn't that he fell for her, plenty of people did. What's strange is how he pursued it. He didn't send flowers exactly. He sent letters, religious ones. He apparently framed the whole thing not as an affair, but as something closer to divine will, like this was a plan handed down from somewhere above. And resisting it was resisting fate itself. One surviving note from her own memoir has him apologizing for pressing her too hard and asking her to pray with him until they spoke again. She turned him down. Twice, actually once in that film in Spain, and again 2 years later when they were paired up in the romantic comedy Houseboat, ironically playing two people who fall in love and marry on screen, while off-screen, she was quietly saying no to him for the second time. For decades, the story was told as a grand, sweeping romantic tragedy. Cary Grant allegedly proposed marriage to her outright. But here's the twist. In 2020, Sophia herself pushed back on that version. Told an interviewer the proposal story might have been exaggerated into something a little too neat, a little too cinematic to be entirely true, which means we genuinely don't know the full shape of what happened between them. We have his letters, we have her memory, which has shifted slightly over 60 years of retelling. Somewhere between those two things is the truth, and nobody alive can hand it to us with total certainty. I find that kind of unsettling, honestly, that even the people who live the story can lose track of exactly what happened inside it. Let's put something remarkable next to all this chaos. In 1961, Sophia Loren won the Academy Award for Best Actress for a film called Two Women, playing a mother trying to protect her daughter during the war. It was entirely in Italian. No English-language performance had ever won that category before. Hollywood, an industry that has spent a century being suspicious of subtitles, gave its top acting prize to a woman speaking a language most of the room didn't understand a word of. She wasn't even at the ceremony, too nervous, she said later, to fly out and possibly lose in front of everyone. She found out over the phone in Rome in the middle of the night. And now the part of her life that sounded the most like a bad joke, except it happened, and it was not funny at the time at all. In May of 1982, Italian police arrived at Sophia Loren's home and arrested her. The charge, tax evasion. The real story, which took nearly 40 years to fully untangle, involved a dispute over which tax bracket her income from a 1970s film should have fallen into a disagreement essentially between her accountant and the Italian government about a few percentage points. She turned herself in, walked into a low-security women's prison near Naples and served 17 days of a 30-day sentence, getting released early for good behavior. Fans rallied outside. There were protests in New York's Little Italy demanding her release. A woman who had, by then, an Academy Award and international fame, spent over 2 weeks in an Italian jail cell over a tax bracket dispute. Here's the part that still gets me. The case dragged on in appeals for 39 more years. In 2013, Italy's Supreme Court finally formally ruled that she should never have been in prison at all, that the whole thing had been covered by a tax amnesty the entire time. She was 79 years old when the paperwork finally caught up to reality. She called it, simply, a miracle of justice. Her lawyer called it Kafkaesque. I don't think either of them was exaggerating. So here's where I land, thinking about all of this. Sophia Loren is one of those figures we tend to flatten into a single image. The glamour, the accent. The beauty magazines couldn't stop photographing for 70 years. But underneath that image is a kid who ran from bombs, a young woman legally accused of being a public sinner for marrying the man she loved, a movie star fending off a Hollywood legend's very strange, very devout pursuit, and a grandmother, by the time it was all over, who'd spent 17 days in an Italian jail cell for a mistake that took the legal system 4 decades to admit wasn't even hers. She's still with us, by the way. Still Italian cinema's brightest surviving symbol from an era most of its other stars didn't live to see the end of. And maybe that's the real unknown here, not just what happened between her and Cary Grant, or exactly how brutal that childhood in Pozzuoli really was day to day, but how anyone carries a life like that and still walks into a room looking like nothing ever touched her at all.